to thank you for allowing me into your homes for this 13th episode of Season 5 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. And I would like to start by making a couple of brief announcements. First one being the metaphysical philosophical meeting that we here at Esoteric Science Roundtable and Jeff Contreras from Therefore I Am co-host each and every third Wednesday of the month. We'll be falling on the 16th of May, this particular month of May. And we encourage anyone that's interested in coming on down to visit with us, to chat about esoteric, philosophical, metaphysical subjects. And if they have something they'd care to bring to our attention, by all means, certainly. And just to share and exchange and break bread with like-minded people that are interested in these topics. And again, we encourage everyone to come down. It starts about 8 and we leave whenever people are about ready to head out. So usually lively exchanges and a good time is usually had by all, so we do encourage you folks to come on down if you're interested. Also, there is another meeting that I hope to be starting. There are a couple of people, actually I have some acquaintances that are affiliated with the Theosophical Society. That may not amaze too many of you out there, but at any rate, the Theosophical Society here for Texas, the closest one is in San Antonio, and there are some adherents to Theosophy that live here in the Austin area, and there's been some discussion about hosting a Theosophical study group, not in the sense that Jeff sometimes refers to our metaphysical study group as a study group when it's actually just a casual social gathering. This would actually be more of a classroom kind of thing. I would hope to host it at Spider House, the same as the metaphysical meetings, again, every second Wednesday, and I'm hoping to begin in June, which would fall on the 13th, and I'll give more information as I'm able to flesh that out more so, but it's really looking as if there will be a second Wednesday meeting at Spider House that I'll be hosting at least, and again, some other people that are theosophically inclined, and then we'll actually encourage people to study some of these concepts as opposed to just have casual conversation. So that I'll give more information as I'm able to, and as I'm able to flesh that out more so. But in all likelihood, the second Wednesday of June will be the inaugural Theosophical study group that hopefully will be hosting soon. So I want to thank everybody for considering that, and certainly welcome to email me if you'd like, or get a hold of me about that. Today's discussion, I would like to talk about New World religion. This is a subject that has gotten a lot of interest and garnered a lot of notoriety over time, certainly in the last 50 years, let's say, thereabouts. And I think it's gotten there are many misconceptions about what a potential New World religion may actually look like, and some of the specifications or the parameters of what this may pan out to be. And so I would like to give some concepts, give some ideas about the potential concepts of how this may actually flesh out when it does materialize. And I would say when. I do believe this is more a matter of when it's going to happen, not a matter of if it's going to happen. Again, New World religion is often tied in with the concept of a New World Order, where there is one order. And this is a point of concern for many people, and understandably so, because I myself love variety. I love the variety on this planet. I love variety in music. I love just the multitude of everything in manifestation. You know, even the rose bushes, you know, there are many different colors, flowers of many different colors. You know, I could go on and on. So many different varieties, and just with our humanity as well. There are so many different ethnicities and mixes and matches of our one humanity. There's so much diversity that I think it's a shame to not appreciate all of that. But we are, again, one humanity, and there is one God. And so it makes sense that there would be one agreed upon, or one more appropriate approach to divinity that would be encompassing of other religious concepts. Now again, this is a concern for many people because they have their particular or peculiar beliefs, and they would not want to give those up, and that's understandable. But certainly within the existing religions, there are already so many fractures and little, streams and tributaries that there's that reconciling is really yet to even start to begin in a real earnest fashion. So any undue concerns or fears about a pending or impending New World religion, I think, are more likely, are largely unfounded. Because again, if we think about in terms of just Christianity, there are thousands of sects. There are thousands of derivations and deviations from the one originating stream. And I think certainly to a degree, this is right and proper that we have this ability to fracture and multiply and replicate the concept. Because again, truth and the divine energy that lies behind our manifestation is singular as well. And so this singularity playing out through our diverse population of humanity is right in the respect that different people are going to be more, or some different approaches to Christianity or any religion for that matter are going to appeal to different people at varying levels. And so a slightly different interpretation seems appropriate and adequate. And the fact that there are so many in manifestation, there is no mistake with that. So there are certainly some things that can be agreed upon, again, with the Christian sects, that Christ is the main focus of this consideration, just in the same sense Buddhism, Buddha, Hinduism, Krishna. There's a main great religious figure lying back behind the impetus or the origin of these religions. And so this is a key thing to consider. My understanding is that there has never been a time when man has been left without some divine guidance. And so we see the ebb and flow of this divine approach coming into our human manifestation from time to time. And so an avatar or great religious or spiritual teacher will incarnate on the planet in order to bring out some information that is needed, a new current or new interpretation of the current that will be right and proper for our point in evolution. And so if we trace back the origin of previous religions, and again, many still existing and still practiced by large numbers of the population, but that they had a certain energy for a certain time. And granted, they do mold and adapt and change in certain cases, but that this divine revelation, this divine unfolding finds its way into manifestation. And this is also why a consummation or a conglomeration of these concepts is right as the concept of one humanity, one globe, one God becomes more pervasive among the men and women on the planet. And so as this becomes more pervasive and more understood and just a given, just a fact that there is one humanity, one approach to divinity, again, with varying, there will certainly be different aspects of it for different people, but nonetheless, there will be certain key components, rather, that this will be built upon. And this was some of what I'd like to get into a little bit here. Some may be familiar with the fact that I myself am involved in an esoteric order, and the esoteric order that I'm involved in is known as the Arcane School, which is a little subdivision of the Lucis Trust. And the Lucis Trust has been, from my research, the main proponent, the main adherent, and the main group that's bringing out information about this potential New World religion. And that's why certain people, when they're aware of this, they instantly and automatically are inclined to say, oh, look, this is the group that's going to be bringing forth the Antichrist, and this is going to be, an enslavement, and we're going to have to be forced to worship some new religious figure. And I think that this is, from my experience, and I'm just shy of being with the Lucis Trust for 10 years. Coming up on June 3rd, actually 1 month from now, will be my 10-year anniversary. And from every understanding, inkling, everything I've been able to surmise about this institution, this group, this school, is that these concepts are not going to be forced on anyone. These concepts have to be readily accepted by through our free will. If any imposition of ideas really flies in the face of the concepts of worship and religion and all of these things that we're familiar with, it wouldn't work that way if we were forced to have to think a certain way. And so I just want to lay that out there for some consideration. With within the arcane school, there's much information that's been written about again, the parameters or the different concepts about a New World religion. And so anyone that's interested in checking out those books certainly would be able to find more. Even looking on a search engine and typing up New World religion, you're going to get a lot of hits. Again, many are going to be derogatory or going to paint this in a negative way. So again, I would caution some discernment in that respect. But anyway, the arcane school and Lucis Trust do emphasize and are proponents of this concept. And that doesn't mean that Lucis Trust will be the arbiters or the controllers of this by any stretch. And I think to assume that is a little ridiculous as well. If anyone, I just have to ask that you kind of take my word on it, that I've been affiliated with the school long enough to know that anyone that would consider that the arcane school or Lucis Trust would have the power or the intent to want to do something like this, to force people to worship a certain way or adhere to a certain religious point of view, is really ridiculous again. But there are aspects that are brought out in the information in the books that Alice Bailey wrote between 1919 and 1949, and also what is relayed through the school and what is entailed in the schoolwork. And it's based on rhythm, it's based on cycles, and it's based on the use of energy and force. And mainly one of the ways in which this is recognized and practiced and brought into an actual way in which we can contact the divine and work with the divine directly. And that is at the time of the new moon and the full moon. And this, again, probably sounds very new agey, and I really despise that term, but the metaphysical concepts behind working with the new and the full moon is, again, based on energy and force. When you have the new moon, for all intents and purposes, there is no moon in the sky. It's obscured, you don't see it. And so that would indicate or represent a point where this energy is just beginning. It's not really apparent. And so as the moon starts to wax and grow, then this energy builds, and the particular quality that each sign of the zodiac holds will also tie into the quality that we have available for us during these periods. And so currently, we just had the full moon in May, and this is oftentimes referred to as the Vesak festival that the Buddhists are familiar with, and the Buddhist practice and keep faithful once a year around this time. Again, at the full moon, the May full moon, the Vesak festival. And so we in the Arcane School, and other groups as well, use this energy and work from the new moon to the full moon. And again, the particular injunction or keynote, esoteric keynote for Taurus, which is again the full moon time that Vesak falls upon, the keynote is, I see, and when the eye is opened, all is light. And this refers to Taurus, the bull, having obviously two eyes, representing our duality. And as that duality is merged into a singularity and that focus becomes one, then this ties into, again, when the eye is opened, all is light. And this also ties into a big biblical phrase as well, which is, if thine eye be single, thy whole body will be filled with light. And it's another way of saying the exact same thing. So these esoteric keynotes are not really new. They're just, I guess, repackaged a bit for today's student or seeker. And this is the case with these particular festivals, which would be, there are 3 festivals so-called, and they are tied to the full moon, that are the high holy festivals, if you will, that the Arcane School per se holds. Now, this doesn't mean that every esoteric organization gathers and honors and pools their resources at these times. I can't speak for all of them, but I speak for my own tradition and my own school. So the high holy days, so-called, and I'm kind of reluctant to use that term as well, but nonetheless, Easter, which is the Aries full moon, and this is, actually, if you will bear with me, I'm going to read very briefly from an Alice Bailey book that describes a little bit about the festivals, so please bear with me while I do that. And first of all, and again, keeping in mind that the full moon festivals, every full moon and new moon is recognized, and there's a particular meditation that is used on these times. There's a specific meditation for the new moon, and there's a specific full moon meditation. And keeping that in mind, the festival of Easter, again, the first one of these three, in falling in the Aries full moon, the festival of Easter, this is the festival of the risen, living Christ, the teacher of all men and the head of the spiritual hierarchy. He is the expression of the love of God. On this day, the spiritual hierarchy, which he guides and directs, will be recognized, and the nature of God's love will be emphasized. This festival is determined always by the date of the first full moon of spring, and is the great Western and Christian festival. And so this one, the Christian members that are interested or are listening to this information may not have too much of a problem with that. Maybe not, I don't know, depending, I guess, on the interpretation of Easter. And not even getting into the origin of any of these Christian holidays and where they originally came from. Then again, the second festival, which we just had this past Tuesday morning at 5:10 a.m. here Central Time, was the festival of ESR, which is the festival of the Buddha. And this is the high holy festival, if you will, for the Arcane School. And this is when the conference in New York is held. And the conference in New York will be falling on this particular weekend, as a matter of fact. And unfortunately, I won't be able to go and attend this time. But we do link up as a group, fortunately, and we're able to, play along at home, if you will, with the group. And so again, this most recent festival, which is the festival of ESR, this is the festival of the Buddha, the spiritual intermediary between the highest spiritual center, Shambhala, and the hierarchy. The Buddha is the expression of the wisdom of God, the embodiment of light, and the indicator of the divine purpose. This will be fixed annually in relation to the full moon of May, as is at present the case. It is the Great Eastern Festival. So you see between these two the merging of the Great Western Festival and the Great Eastern Festival, and also tying into the keynote of Taurus, once again, that Buddha is the expression of the wisdom of God, the embodiment of light, and the indicator of divine purpose. Again, fixed intent, divine purpose, singular focus. And so again, those qualities emphasize that particular festival. The festival of goodwill, this is falling on the June full moon, and this is upcoming, obviously, next month. Let's see, the festival of goodwill, and this is also known as World Invocation Day, and it's also known as the Festival of Christ. So that's something to keep in mind as well. This will be the festival of the spirit of humanity, aspiring towards God, seeking conformity with the will of God, and dedicated to the expression of right human relations. This will be fixed annually in relation to the full moon of June. It will be a day whereon the spiritual and divine natures of mankind will be recognized. On this festival for 2,000 years, the Christ has represented humanity and has stood before the hierarchy, and in the site of Shambhala, which is the center where the will of God is known, or the Father in heaven aspect of our manifestation on this planet, in the site of Shambhala as the God-man, the leader of his people, and the eldest in a great family of brothers, borrowing that biblically from Romans 8:29. Each year at that time, he has preached the last sermon of the Buddha before the assembled hierarchy. This will, therefore, be a festival of deep invocation and appeal, of a basic aspiration towards fellowship of human and spiritual unity, and will represent the effect in the human consciousness of the work of the Buddha and the Christ. And so again, Buddha and Christ are two great brothers in one work, and this I cannot emphasize enough. In addition, the previous great world religions also have their ties to Christianity and to Christ as the head of hierarchy, so-called, the just men made perfect, those that work behind the scenes to guide the race, known as hierarchy, the masters. There are other terms for them as well, but nonetheless, this energy held together, or held by these great religious avatars, again, helps to demonstrate or indicate the relationship between East and West, and between all divine approaches to all approaches to divinity, again, coming from one source ultimately. And so we can see how Christ has merged throughout our human evolution. And again, this is somewhat perhaps controversial, or I'm not sure what the term would be, but nonetheless, if we consider these ideas hypothetically at least, that Christ was a man at one point in time, far, far back in our human evolution, and that he advanced further than anyone had done so. he took initiation, so-called, at a much earlier time than others had it available to them. He progressed so quickly. And this also ties into the Alpha and the Omega concept, and being slain from the foundation of the world, and the ideas of, again, being the eldest brother in our family. This all ties into this concept and this idea that Christ did progress so rapidly that he earned this position as our world teacher, and as, again, embodying the second aspect of the Trinity, which also goes to show that Christ certainly is human no longer, although well, that's not even accurate either. He is human, although he's left behind what we would normally consider humanity, because of his spiritual ability to hold this quality within one person, within one form. And so this, again, is a great accomplishment, and this also shows what is available for us as humanity. And so we will be able to take advantage of this as well. And so there's also a concept of, there's also the concept that certain other religions had a Christian origin in a sense as well. Hinduism, rather, being one of them, in that Krishna, according to certain esoteric tradition, was also Christ in an earlier incarnation. And so these two religions obviously would have, by virtue of that, a kinship. And as I stated earlier, Christ as the exponent of love, Buddha as the exponent of wisdom, work together in that context. And then this, again, is a further unfolding, and this demonstrates this divine approach and how it cyclically comes into manifestation and then leaves again. And so Krishna being a former incarnation of Christ, then again the Buddha being an exponent of wisdom, although not Christ and not an incarnation of Christ, again tying to this. And there is much talk about a Maitreya, which is a Buddhist term, and the appearance or the reappearance of the Maitreya Buddha. So the next incarnation of the Buddha will be the Maitreya Buddha, so-called. This has varying different interpretations as well. And there are certainly esoteric individuals, for instance, I'll quote, or not quote specifically, but borrow from the concepts that Manly Palmer Hall has written about. And he talks about the Maitreya Buddha in the classical sense, that we currently are in a certain phase or stage of our evolution, which is known as the fifth subrace of the fifth race, considering that there are 7 subraces in a race. When we reach 2 more, the culmination of this, and 2 more smaller portions before the finalizing of this 5th portion of our evolution as humanity, then the 6th obviously will begin. So there is some consideration, or there's one tradition that speaks of the Maitreya Buddha incarnating at this time during the 6th race. And this is also, there's a term round as well, and so the 6th round has implications as well. I'm not going to delve into that too much, but these are concepts that are often applied to our unfolding of evolution, and also to these avatars as well that have come into incarnation in the past, and will continue to do so as well into the future. And so the main exponent or proponent of the Maitreya, and using the term Maitreya to indicate a world teacher, is the individual Benjamin Creme. Some may be familiar with him. Oftentimes Benjamin Creme is lumped in with Lucis Trust, Arcane School, and that is not the case. He is his own person with his own group, and even has his own form of meditation that he encourages people to use. And he also is someone that claims to be in touch with these masters, so-called, and he'll say, "Oh, let me check with the master," and he'll get some information coming in, immediately coming in. And this is not really how the hierarchy works. And this is just from my understanding, that you don't have instant ready access to these great teachers. They have neither the time nor the inclination to be concerned with individuals at that level under those circumstances. Now, that's not to say that individuals aren't able to be in touch or in rapport with these masters and be involved in a group at some level. That does take place, and humanity does find themselves being part of hierarchy and being the intermediaries between those that are a little bit fresher on the evolutionary path of humanity and those that have been traveling for a while. And so we find a hierarchical pyramidal structure, if you will, that indicates or represents this. Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known, being at the apex or the top of the pyramid. Then the next connecting arm being hierarchy, Christ and the Church Invisible, so-called, and then ultimately our humanity. But keeping in mind that our humanity has its, again, intermediaries that are able to, some are part of this hierarchy, so-called, and in rapport, in a very dim sense, with the will of God. Certainly Christ being the exponent and the one individual that was able to merge with the Father, being somewhat the exception. And so this being the case with Benjamin Crane espousing ideas of the Maitreya and clouding the issue even more, and this is just oftentimes people just assume that he's using these terms, and so he's affiliated with this group. And again, as I have to reiterate, he's not affiliated with Lucis Trust or Arcane School. But he brings out this Maitreya Buddha, and again, this I think is I'm not really sure how. I would caution anybody to run, roughshod or go off half-cocked on this one. I would really encourage you to use some discernment before, chasing after any Maitreyas being cited here, there, or the other place for that matter. Actually, even the website that Benjamin Crane, according to my understanding, has some affiliation with, did have the Alice Bailey books listed, and there are English language interpretations and then there are other languages as well. But Lucis Trust asked this group, or whomever, again, I think, and my understanding is this is affiliated with Benjamin Crane, asked him to remove the English language Alice Bailey books from his site. And again, this is further indication that there's no affiliation between these two. The Lucis Trust actually does help. It's a nonprofit, and it falls under the 501c3 and all that fun stuff. And so by virtue of that, they obviously need to help fund the operation, and it's all volunteer. It's all by donation. And so they depend on people buying the books from time to time to help float things, basically. And so even though it was a great resource, and it still is accessible, quite frankly, to get to these books, and they're indexed reasonably well, and there's a search engine and all that. So I can't really knock whomever, and again, I'm quite confident it was somebody with the Benjamin Crane group that put this on initially, but still, again, it goes to show that there's no direct connection, or I would hope that it would help to demonstrate there's no direct connection between these groups. And so, please don't be confused if you hear somebody talking about Maitreya, that this is some Arcane School or Lucis Trust affiliated spokesperson, official or otherwise. And so there actually is much writing in the Alice Bailey books that's tied to the idea and the science of religion, the science of our approach to the divine. And there are certain key components of it, certain tenets that I would like to expound upon a little bit here, and really, I guess, 4 main ones that I'd like to get into in particular. The first one is the concept, or the science, more appropriately, of invocation and evocation. Now, this is, I guess, maybe religion is not often thought of as a science, probably more than likely just the opposite. But getting to the esoteric or the inner energies underlying any thought, any concept that emerges, a religion, politics, education, what have you. There is a divine energetic underlying that allows it to come into manifestation. And so this science that as I'm referring to it as, in regard to a New World religion, would have certain key components that would be a big cornerstone. And again, invocation and evocation. We invoke. When we invoke something, we call in, we bring in, and in this instance, we invoke energies. And as I spoke of earlier, just one aspect, and that is with the new to the full moon, invoking that energy, and then working with the keynote. As I said earlier, there are different keynotes for each of the zodiacal, each of the constellations, the 12 constellations. And so working with that energy and working with the qualities that are carried forward through these streams and these currents at these times. And so we can work intelligently from the time of the new moon and gain and grow with that energy to the time of the full moon. And then as it begins to wane, that energy starts to fade, and then the new incoming energy of the next constellation in line will become more prevalent and prominent, and we can begin to work towards that. And so any work that we would be doing, esoterically speaking, or otherwise, I guess for that matter too, would be conditioned to a certain degree by these qualities. And so this again varies from month to month. And we invoke these energies. And so we bring in the energy of Taurus, for instance, during Vesak and during that next month that precedes. And so that's, again, an aspect of that. Also, evocation. We evoke the life more abundant. We evoke and we call down the assistance of greater lives than ourselves. And as we are able to evoke a response, and this is also very intimately tied into the capacity or quality of mind emerging in our humanity. As the quality of mind becomes more acute and the quality of mind becomes more inclusive and more specialized, because we are evolving as a humanity, make no mistake about it. As we become more mentally polarized and focused, and the emotional nature takes a back seat in many respects, then the life more abundant, or the Father in Heaven aspect, can become more prominent and prevalent and play a larger role in accordance with our little lesser wills. And so we can align our will with the greater will of the Father, much in the way that Jesus through Christ was able to do in the gospel narratives. Now this may be considered blasphemous to some, and I suppose that's understandable, but nonetheless we can evoke this will aspect of God. And now granted, not everybody could or would want to do this. Not everybody has the discipline to even want to meditate on a daily basis, pray on a daily basis, or do anything, recurring in a recurring way, much, aside from perhaps things they have to do, like go to work and things of that nature. And so getting in this rhythm is also an underlying key component of what we will continue to work with more so in the future. And these concepts will gain more momentum and more validity in the minds of thinking men and scientific community, for that matter, hopefully the religious community. Granted, they're oftentimes the most unyielding to new ideas and new concepts, unfortunately. But this evocation, this evoking these greater, more expansive intelligences is possible. And I'm not speaking about extra cosmic in the sense of hooking up with some aliens or something like that. This is a great and grand representation of divinity that has found a manifestation into some condensed energies. And there are many. There are some that are known as, there are energies that are known as the spirit of peace, for instance, that allegedly works in conjunction with the Christ. The avatar of synthesis is another. Lords of karma is another concept. That there are these entities, if you will, that have come into manifestation around these great energies. And so this is part also of us being able to tap into these energies, use these energies, and evoke, call down the more greater, more inclusive energies. And so this will gain more prominence and prevalence, I think, as we progress as humanity. Also, the concepts of God, God immanent and God transcendent. God immanent, referring to the concept that God is in all things. Make no mistake about it, this is an esoteric truism. This is a definite esoteric axiom that holds steady that in all manifestation there is a kernel of divinity, even in the most, even in things we would not think of, even in the things that we think of as most far removed from God. Anything in manifestation, anything that plays out, is part of God. And for us to disregard that, I think, is only to our own hindrance that would be the case. And so if we were at least willing to consider some of these concepts, at least, again, hypothetically, I think it would be useful for us as humanity collectively. Again, God immanent, God transcendent. God immanent referring to the God in all things. God transcendent referring to the God that's out there. And the God transcendent, unfortunately, has been adopted more often than not, that people pray to some vague, nebulous intelligence out there somewhere that's not connected with us, that kind of hatched us like an egg, if you will, and then went on to this next great adventure. And I think that's also to our, this is also hindering us as a race as well, that we have this, we do tend to hold this, many humans tend to hold this concept as right and proper. But it is true that God is out there and God is in here. And so we have to merge and understand that God is both immanent and transcendent. And so we at least have the kernel in us, the core kernel in us, of this greater, grander aspect, this transcendent aspect of creation or God or intelligence, the grand architect. We have that in us, we have that kernel in us, and so we can demonstrate God immanent and God transcendent. And this will become, this again is a cyclic, rhythmic approach as well, and this will gain more consideration, I think, as the years go by, and quite frankly, sooner than later, as a matter of fact, as well. Okay, another aspect will be the embodiment of the concept of the Trinity in a new, unique fashion as well, that we can approach the Trinity in a more, in a much realer actual sense. And the idea of the Trinity, again, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, can be interpreted in terms of Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity. Shambhala representing the Father, hierarchy representing the Son aspect, and humanity representing the Mother aspect or the manifested aspect. And so these three aspects of, and the idea of triangles is very important in esotericism as well. And we can think in terms of atomic structures as well, positive, negative, and neutral, positive, negative, and neutral. These tie in intimately and scientifically at the core of this Trinity aspect and this triangulation as well of energies. And this is how, this forms the building block of how we work intelligently with energy and force. We invoke, we call in the Father, and as we call in, we evoke, we draw out this divine aspect for the great, hopefully for the greater, and certainly for the greater, actually I should clarify that, for the greater helping of our humanity. No negative or black magician, so-called, would be able to attune to Shambhala. That would not be possible. Although, again, anything negative is still part of God, it's still part of creation, so keeping that in mind also. This concept and this relation will become more intimate as time progresses, and I think, again, as I mentioned a second ago, much more sooner than later. And this will allow for, again, a much more intimate understanding and a way in which we as humanity can play our role in this hierarchical or pyramidic structure, in that we will begin to allow for the emerging of a new kingdom on the planet, well, not on the planet so much, but in manifestation among humanity actively working. Currently, the aspect called hierarchy, Christ and the Church Invisible, are, for the most part, invisible in that their workings out is not readily apparent to most persons. And so they're not invisible in the sense that you cannot visibly see them. They're invisible in the sense that they work behind the scenes, again, with energy and force, and so they're not known. And so again, that's the reasoning for that. But there has to be a merging, ultimately, of this fifth kingdom, so-called hierarchy, with our fourth kingdom, humanity, keeping in mind the kingdoms being mineral, plant, animal, our humanity, and then again the fifth kingdom, the hierarchy, those just men made perfect, and this Christ in the church invisible. And so this esteemed group of individuals is making a closer approach to our humanity by virtue of our invoking that group and calling them in for a closer rapport, for more intimate work. And this is something that also is a point of concern for many, the externalization of the hierarchy. And this is taking place, again, and more rapidly than not. But the concept is, and if this would prove accurate, and I do definitely tend to think this will pan out, and if folks, again, would just take this hypothetically, I would really appreciate that. That, again, as we invoke and we call in these teachers, that they will begin to, and will be able to, by our request, be able to work more intimately with humanity. And so we can do many things to help invoke, and we can use prayers, and we can do certain things, and one great prayer is the great invocation. And this is a prayer that has been popularized by the Alice Bailey Group, Lucis Trust, and the Arcane School. Other people have used it and continue to use it, and it's a beautiful prayer, and from my experience, I understand it to be a tool for working with energy. And since this is very close to the Vesak Festival, it is my hope to tie into or tune into that energy at some level, and to ask anyone that would be interested to help me by reciting either aloud or just, listening and applying your intent to this particular prayer. And I would like to use the Great Invocation now, keeping in mind that this is a means by which we can attune with the divine. And this is a wonderful means by which to do this. And so if I may begin now, I would like to ask anyone that's interested in joining to consider these words. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And I'm going to thank everyone that took the time to add their energies with that, and that's much appreciation. Now, again, considering the words to the invocation, it does speak of the plan. Let the plan of love and light work out. Now, this is another point of concern for some, that there is a plan in place for our humanity. And not just our humanity, actually. It's much more comprehensive than that. To just think of the plan in terms of a new world order, political system, or enslavement system, that is very limited tunnel vision thinking. This is much more inclusive. And to even, really it takes a long time really to begin to even get an inkling of how comprehensive the concept of the plan is, so-called. Now, as to what this plan is and how we as humanity can intelligently apprehend and apply our efforts to this plan, that's open to some debate, but nonetheless, we can intelligently work with these energies and forces, and we can apply ourselves to working out what we feel is our own particular role. And this is how the plan truly manifests. We as humanity, those that reach a certain point of divine understanding and hold that divinity as a constant to a certain degree, are able to apprehend at some level this plan. It is like a rain cloud that precipitates down, and this is with many ideas and many scientific discoveries and things of that nature, that it's kind of out there in the consciousness, and then this particular scientist will grasp this idea for an X-ray, for instance, or the Curies finding radium, different things of this nature. And so we as humanity also are able to tune in to this plan. It's not, again, I have to really emphasize, this is not something that's forced upon us. It's not something that's being beamed at us, like something that, I don't know, it's not being beamed at us and focused on us as some might perceive. It's something that it's a working out. It's an archetype. It's a structure. It's a substructure. It's the ground. I mean, it's the underlying aspect. I can't think of the word I'm trying to find right now, but it's the underlying aspect of our creation, our manifestation. And so we can tune in and understand this to a certain degree. We can see the scaffolding in place, and we can understand what will come. We can see the patterns of things to come by virtue of apprehending and understanding this plan, so-called. And so we can work with it, and if we choose to do so. And certainly we have to be able to tune in with it and for it to mean something to us. The idea that someone would be in rapport with the hierarchy, so-called, or a master, and that, oh, the master said this or the master said that, this is very much a misnomer as well. Individuals become in rapport with this concept of hierarchy. And we, by our own natural desires, will be in tune or in rapport with this quality. If a person is on fire, for instance, to help humanity and they want to heal people, then their efforts to heal will ultimately, if the circumstances are right, will coincide with the hierarchical effort, will coincide with an energy type. There are 7 specific types, or rays, as they're sometimes known as, and these rays, so-called, also indicate the lines along which the hierarchy work. And so if we're in tune, for instance, with religion, we would be in tune with the 6th ray of devotion. If we were of the scientific sentiment, then we would be in tune with the 5th ray of concrete science. Those in education are in tune with the 2nd ray, love, wisdom. Those in government, the 1st ray, will or power. Finance, the 7th ray. Ceremonial magic is also the 7th ray of ceremonial magic and order. And again, there's 7. And so we find this delineation or this differentiation along these major 7 streams, these 7 thrones before the Spirit of God. This ties in intimately, again, with this unfolding of our humanity. And we can choose to work with these energies, again, under the right and proper circumstances. Now, again, it's not as if the master is saying, go and do this. We, of our own volition, are already so in tune with a concept that it naturally locks into place with the plan, so-called, outside of our understanding in many cases, and really, outside of any real planning to be with the plan. It just unfolds in this respect, and this merging of energies takes place. And so that's something to be considered as well. Another aspect of it, and really the last aspect of a component of a future New World religion, would be the restoration of the mysteries, so-called. Many are familiar with the mystery schools and the esoteric schools of the past, and that all previous societies, all previous cultures since the inception of our self-conscious humanity, roughly 18 million years ago, according to esoteric tradition, have been able to partake of the guidance, the instruction, the imparting of wisdom and knowledge by virtue of these esteemed individuals that have, again, worked behind the scenes in many cases, but in past times worked directly with our humanity. This is a key component of this to consider. In the past, humanity worked directly on the physical plane in contact and in context with the hierarchy, so-called. And so what was unfolding on the physical plane was a direct correlation of that relationship. Now, as humanity has evolved and certain aspects of our evolution had to take place, hierarchy was forced to recede and to, again, work in an invisible or behind-the-scenes fashion, as they are currently. Keeping in mind that the hierarchy is approaching rapidly our humanity and that we are invoking their special skills and invoking this rapport with them. And as this becomes more potent within those enough individuals in humanity, the externalization of the hierarchy, so-called, will begin. And this will work in the respect that these great individuals will find their way, by virtue of their ray type, in these specific areas of endeavor. You'll find the first ray masters involved in government and politics on the planet. And again, this might be a frightening concept to some. So be it. You'll find that those second ray masters will be involved with the educational process. Social systems and things of that nature through the third ray. Again, science, arts, and humanities will find their expression through the fourth ray of harmony through conflict, or you could consider that as order from chaos, another term that will tickle the earballs of some. This again is, there have been so many misconceptions, and I can only clarify or hope to elucidate on a few of these points in the short time that I have. But nonetheless, I do want to emphasize that my understanding and my firm belief is that we will work in rapport with these great teachers, and that they will find their way. They already are in bodies, physical bodies, on the globe in certain locations. They just don't expose themselves to humanity in the respect that a preacher from the pulpit may, or a politician giving a speech on television may. But this will change as humanity is more receptive to and more desirous of this condition to manifest. And so we can work. We can use a great invocation. We can attune or align ourselves with the higher will as much as we're able to. And we can do what we're able to use ourselves as a tool or a channel or a focus for some sort of energy to work towards an uncovering or a discovering or an unfolding of the life more abundant. And we can work towards and comprehend more so the will aspect of God as this process unfolds more so. Again, I think much more quickly than not, due to the present world crisis and due to certain circumstances. Now, certainly Christ will not be able to reappear in any physical vessel or vehicle without these prerequisites being met, and that would be that there would be a certain measure of house cleaning in the world's churches and political arenas, and that there would be an understanding of one humanity, and certain tenets would have to be accepted globally by enough individuals for then the hierarchy to emerge and interact intimately and in a real fashion with our humanity, and then past that point for Christ to actually emerge and reappear as a world teacher in a physical body. Keeping in mind, I use the term Christ, as does the Arcane School and as does Lucis Trust. If you hear someone refer to that great energy, the second aspect of the Trinity, as other than Christ, they're likely not affiliated with the Arcane School or Lucis Trust in all likelihood. So that's just, again, another thing I want to, without beating that point to death, I just want to emphasize that enough that it's understood by those that are curious about that. And so we have a definite ability to allow for this light, so-called, this spiritual light, to be made manifest. We can look throughout history and see the evolution on the physical plane of light. Light has been constantly making its way into manifestation in ever more inclusive and ever more, I guess, just comprehensive ways. And the whole, if we look from space to the globe, we see it's a lit planet. There are lights, and there are cities, and it's teeming with activity, and it's teeming with light. The planet used to be much dimmer, obviously, and that was when we were also dimmer in the respect of our ability to discern, understand, and intuit and apprehend the will of God. So even light from the fire, discovery of fire, so-called, to the discovery of the incandescent light bulb by Thomas Edison, a fellow of the Theosophical Society, I might add, that this process has began to unfold and continues to unfold. And now we are interested in the radioactive aspects of light. And we as humanity are radioactive and becoming more radioactive. This is part and parcel of this divine approach, of this new religious consideration, that we can emit light and we can radiate light, and we can encompass that and we can accentuate the light in our own selves, in our own personal daily lives. And we can bring to any situation light. We can elucidate something. We can bring points to light. We can bring understanding to situations. And again, adding light to things. This is something that we can do metaphorically and literally and realistically. We can add light. We can bring in light. And so we, as light, can become more light. We can be better vehicles by which the light can be made manifest and can work out. This is all, again, tied into our evolutionary process. As we evolve, we will become more potent emitters of light. We will become more radioactive, and we will understand more so and appreciate more so one humanity, one God, one creative impulse cyclically playing out throughout all creation. We can tap into this concept at many levels. Simple prayer is usually the first step, and I would encourage people at the very minimum to at least pray, because this will at least begin to attune us to the divine, and this is something I think is desirable. So please do consider this, folks, this information. If anybody has questions, please contact me. I'd be happy to chat with them about this. This is, again, an interesting topic, but I want to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. I want to thank Donna for helping to navigate. Thanks, Austin. You guys have a nice evening. We'll see you soon. Take care.